Hey everyone, my name is Monica Kelly, and I am going to be summarizing for Group 2, chapters 1 and 16 from our readings that were assigned this week. So to start out, chapter 1 is called The Coercive World. Sidman notes that we live in a very coercive world and that we're constantly being told what to do by warning signals and threats. This comes from different law enforcement agencies, churches, landlords, educators, bosses, our parents, and so many more different aspects of our lives. I guess it's important to note what coercion is, and he defines it as punishment or negative reinforcement, threats of punishment, whether it's implied or explicit. Basically, if you do something bad is going to happen. There are many different examples of coercion and how it impacts us, and he gave a few different examples. One fairly minor example of coercion is telling somebody, bring an umbrella because it's going to rain. You're coercing them to bring the umbrella so they don't get wet, which would be the punisher. Another example would be aggressively pushing someone out of the way of a falling object. You're coercing them to move from the punisher of that falling object. He also says doctors do it all the time. Don't smoke or you'll get cancer. This might not be that effective, though, because you're not telling people what to do instead. Oftentimes, coercion may work short term, but the side effects are more long term and they might not arise right away. The first section in chapter 1 is called the hostile environment, and it starts out by saying our physical environment constantly threatens us with different variables like heat, cold, wind, rain, snow, things like that. Even though those variables exist, we can't attribute intent to nature. It can't really tell us what to do, but our experiences tell us what to do. He goes on to talk about how coercion is in so many different aspects of our lives. We've just become accustomed to it and accept it as our reality. People sometimes say events are acts of God, and by doing this, we're really blinding ourselves to its coercive character. The second section of chapter 1 is called the hostile community. Because the ever-present physical coercion is always there, we accept social coercion as well. Basically, an example he gave was with children. A lot of people think that punishment should exist in classrooms. They say the rationale for this is that kids are going to be exposed to punishment at some point, might as well start early. That statement really normalizes coercion. I never really thought of it that way, but looking at it this way, it really does. Coercion exists everywhere in our daily lives. Locking your door so something bad doesn't happen to you. You were coerced to do that. If you don't lock your door, somebody's going to break in and steal your stuff or hurt you. We use failing grades as an attempt to get kids to learn. If you don't learn this, you're going to fail the test. We have come to expect that we are going to be warned, threatened, intimidated, pushed around, or coerced by the people who employ us, love us, guide us religiously, lead us in the government, things like that. That's kind of what we expect from our day-to-day lives. He also says that freedom has no qualities of its own, which I really found interesting. Basically, the question is freedom just the absence of everyday coercion? He tells us and explains that Skinner theorized that freedom would really be unnecessary if our society could eliminate the conditions that we're seeking freedom from, which makes sense. In other words, if we didn't threaten each other with negatives or things like that, we would really not need freedom. We would already be free. So those were the main points of chapter 1. Chapter 16 is next, and it was titled, Is There Any Other Way? So to start out, he talks about how we empathize with those that are sick and poor, but we also envy those who have better than us, the well-being of others. We envy that. He says that punishment and negative reinforcement gives us grounds for saying control leads to society's problems. With coercive techniques, he explains that the success is immediate, which gives people in their minds the right to continue using those coercive practices. But oftentimes there are side effects that are long lasting and may not appear right away. So essentially, those long lasting later issues cancel out the positive effects. It's not effective because there are negative side effects. Essentially, he says that coercion defeats its own objective. So he says, now that we know what coercion does and that it's not effective, we have to see what else is available for us to use. So a common misunderstanding is that because of the prevalence of coercion is so high, we assume that our alternative is nothing at all, which isn't true. He says that in our world, there's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment, and they're all very powerful, but they're all very different. Positive reinforcement strengthens what actions produce them. So we know that as behavior analysts. Negative reinforcement strengthen which actions which prevent them. You're taking something away. And those are both alike in the fact that they are increasing the frequency of the behavior that they follow. So positive reinforcement leaves us with what we want. We get something out of it. Negative reinforcement gives us the sense of relief after taking something away. You get that overwhelming sense of relief, like a shoe rubbing on your foot. You take the shoe off, negative reinforcement, you get the sense of relief the shoe is taken away. And punishment leaves us with nothing. So coercion essentially is control through negative reinforcement and punishment. In this situation with those three different behavioral control methods, positive reinforcement is more desired because it teaches you the new ways to act and builds upon what you already know without creating the byproducts of coercion. It doesn't really have any lasting negative effects. He really emphasized the fact that we should use positive reinforcement to change the behavior of others, and we don't have to punish people to prevent them from acting badly. We can reinforce them for doing something else, a different replacement behavior. He goes on to say that positive reinforcement isn't necessarily going to fix the world's problems. That's not what he's saying. He's just proposing a different guiding principle. Positive reinforcement works and coercion is dangerous and might not work. So my question after reading these two chapters for you is that in our current climate with COVID-19 and basically the world being at a standstill, do you think that the media and government has coerced us to follow the stay-at-home orders? And do you think that there is any way to use positive reinforcement rather than coercion to keep us following those same stay-at-home orders? I'm really interested to see what you guys think, and thanks for listening.